Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Thank you, disembodied voice. Wonderful introduction. Welcome once again to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, your one-stop shop for your fix of getting two guys sitting on a couch talking about movies. My name is Joel Listman.
And I'm Ryan.
Ryan has no last name. He's like Cher. I'm just used to saying my full name.
I know. And I'm used to hiding on the internet and trying to pretend like people won't know who I
am. So welcome. This, of course, is the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. And we're glad that you tuned in. We love that we're seeing our listener numbers some days sometimes increase.
Yeah.
I'm actually having people talk to me and saying, I think I mentioned this on the last episode, saying Lady Hawk.
Lady Hawk. Well, yeah, it's nice that we got that. We were expecting at least one of those.
Yeah.
Right.
And welcome. Hope you're having a great week wherever you are.
And a happy holiday season.
Yes, we are now.
We're in the thick of it.
Yeah, we are now right there. In fact, we can tease because this is one of the few times that we are actually thinking ahead in our show besides just texting each other going, so what are we going to talk about this week? Next week will be our holiday extravaganza.
It will be.
Yeah, our super holiday spectacular.
And that makes this the penultimate episode of 2018.
Right, that's correct. So this week, did you have a good week, Ryan? Did you do anything fun this week? Did you see anything fun?
I watched a lot of movies.
That's very unlike you.
I didn't have a lot going on,
yeah.
So I watched a lot of movies, and I had a couple things that didn't happen, and I had a couple of days off, so
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I watched a bunch of movies.
Anything jump out at you? Anything
and I watched a bunch of new movies. This is really, I'm gonna watch between the few days off at Thanksgiving and the New Year. I'm gonna watch almost 100 movies I haven't seen.
Wow.
Yeah, I watch like 3 a night. I just totally marathon the year's movies. Some of which I picked up along the way, but this is where I close that out. And it's movies that I collect, and so it's movies that are kind of out on video. It's really not. It's movies you've all seen. It's movies that were nominated for last year's Oscars.
Oh, okay,
It's last summer's big event movies that I didn't catch in the theater, which I only saw one of them. So, it's that. And yeah, I'm gonna just, since we're talking about it, I'm gonna point out 2 or 3 of them that I thought were really great that I watched, and none of them are what you'd think. I watched some just garbage. I watched Geostorm and I watched Rampage. I don't like to rip on things. We like to do top lists and not worst lists. Rampage is. You don't expect something like Rampage to be good, but it's insultingly bad. Geostorm, as incompetent as it is trying to be good and failing. There's something much more noble about that to me.
Yeah.
They're both garbage, though.
Rampage, very fun video game. I'll give it that.
Yeah, well, and video games, it's weird because they usually make great movies, don't they?
They almost always make fantastic movies.
Yeah, who knew? That they just went wrong this one time.
And I guess,
look, I wanted to talk about good movies, but the point is, I watched a wide variety of stuff. I'm not a total art house freak, okay? But I watched a Western called A Woman Walks Ahead with Jessica Chastain. And it's about the real life woman who traveled from New York when her husband died. She's a societal lady. to paint the portrait of Sitting Bull right around the time the Dakota, I can't remember the exact name of it, but the Dakota Treaty was happening, where they were really going to break up the big plot of land that they gave the Dakota Sioux tribe into essentially what it is now, what it stayed. That's a wonderful movie. It's a kind of quiet movie. You're halfway through till someone fires a gun, and even then it's target practice. So it's a character drama.
Yeah.
The cat, I don't know his name. I can't remember his name now. Sorry, I should have had this in front of me. But the guy who plays just really, really good. I mean, you're playing a total legend, and he achieves that, and he achieves something much more intimate and real all at the same time. And good old one of my favorite guys when he shows up in a little movie is now I'm gonna forget his name too. He was the bad guy in Iron Man 2 with the orange hands, Sam
Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell. Yeah. Boy, do I like Sam Rockwell when he's doing good work.
Mm-hmm.
He's fun when he's doing garbage too. He's like Nick Cage used to be. You know, he's a blast when he shows up, pretty much in any form. He's just great in this. He plays the colonel who's trying to get the Sioux to sign over their land to the government, and he's got. Now, I wouldn't say altruistic reasons for doing that, but he's not what he first seems. That's a good movie. Woman Walks Ahead. Another fun one that I saw. If you like crime, I don't even call it a crime, but like crime, it's like a noir movie, but it takes place in Utah, so it's really sunny and mountainy, which is an unusual place to set a noir.
Utah noir.
Yeah, it's called Small Town Crime. It stars John Hawkes as an alcoholic ex-cop learning to be a private eye. He basically has a case thrust up on him. It's wonderful. The tagline for the movie, and this sells it, is doing the right thing the wrong way.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. It's really, really good. It's got John Hawkes in the leading role is a treasure. Anytime you get to see that, you should see it. Yeah. He's great in our big movie stars' shadows all the time. John's a fantastic actor. Mm-hmm. But when he takes stage, he does it in a sort of wonderful way. It's got like Robert Forrester in it, and it's got just a bunch of people coming at you that you recognize, but aren't necessarily A-level people. And it's great. And then the last one I'll say, and this one you should have heard about because it's a genre movie, and even though it's a small one, had a pretty big star in it. Annihilation.
Oh yeah.
If you like science fiction movies that are scary and intense, but that really challenge you to try and interpret them in a way other than necessarily what you're seeing on screen. I don't like a movie to just be an allegory. I like it to stand on its own too. Alex Garland, who wrote and directed it, also wrote and directed Ex Machina. Yeah. Ex Machina is great. This is a much more sophisticated and bigger idea, Annihilation, and it's a much bigger scaled movie. Yeah. But it's the same kind of, it's very much is the ideas that it's presenting, and its characters discuss sort of the ideas somewhat, but the film exists on an allegorical level. And it's one of those things where if you don't like it or you're confused by it, or you like it but you feel like you want to know more, it's one of those where there's like 25,000 YouTube videos explaining it. None of them quite get the whole thing, but it's one of those movies where you get to read a lot and discuss a lot about it when it's over. Mm-hmm. Just beyond that, it's magistry in images and special effects. It has what I'm going to call a dance sequence in it, which is destined to become a favorite sequence of mine. It's just kind of, it's fun. It blew my mind in a really good way. Yeah, it's not for everybody. Yeah. It's a weird, tough movie. It doesn't make it easy on its audience, and sometimes you want an easygoing sci-fi thriller. This isn't it. Check out him and Danny Boyle's Sunshine for that. That's easier going and it's just as good.
Yeah. Annihilation has been in my book queue And so I've been toying with like, oh, do I hold off on the movie until I've read the book? So that's just a personal thing. I'm not saying always read the book first. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying in this case, I'm like, oh, what do I want to watch first, or what do I want to do first? Do I want to see this movie, or do I want to read this book?
And with this, that's going to be a challenge because each are going to be a very different experience. Kind of like I haven't read the book, so I can't say that, but I just know it in my heart that that's true. Like the Prestige, the book has the bits in it, it's got the whole thing is there, and yet, and it's great. It's very entertaining read. The movie is something else. The movie is something outside of just the story of the characters, and I feel like that's what this is too.
Sure. Me, on the other hand, I really didn't, as usual, I certainly did not see nearly as many movies. I did watch, History Channel had a pretty wonderful 6-hour miniseries on the Watergate scandal. So I watched that, which of course leads me to another watching of All the President's Men, which, as I've mentioned on this podcast before, it is my favorite movie.
I watched Mark Felt was one of the movies in my big pile, and it wasn't one of the top ones, but that's actually a very good movie.
I did watch that. I watched that.
Nice.
Not this past week. I watched that previous weeks, and I had completely forgotten about it.
Watergate from Deep Throat's point of view.
Yep. And it's really terrific. And this History Channel documentary, really well done. I tend to not like documentaries where they use actor reenactments. And this one, surprisingly, obviously there were parts where I'm just kind of like, ugh, but it worked. It actually worked. They had what they would start with, like the tape, the audio of, say, H.R. Haldeman or something talking, and then it would cut to the actor playing it, repeating the same line, and then going back and then doing this, and the actors all kept it very quiet and kept it very small, and it worked. It didn't.
I haven't seen it, but that's impressive because it's a pretty flamboyant cast of characters that are at the heart of that, especially the ones that were taped.
And as someone who has done my share of sometimes historical reenactment stuff, playing, whether it be well-known figures or playing some common guy in
in some Most Wanted segment or whatever.
It's hard to, as an actor, you're trying to be as authentic as possible and natural, and and embody this, and ultimately, when you see it on screen, it's just like, wow, there's no way that happened like that.
But I suppose the Watergate guys were helped considerably by using mostly the words that were actually spoken.
It was all we
have an unbelievable record of that whole thing because of those tapes,
and that certainly helped. So that's kind of where my week was. And I did also watch, and in terms of television, I watched I've been binge watched the second season of Stan vs. Evil on IFC, which it's John C. McGinley and Janet Varney. I pretty much will watch anything John C. McGinley's in.
Sure.
So I give that a watch.
Even Scrubs, you watched every episode.
I watched every dang episode of Scrubs.
Wow.
Yeah. So that John C. McGinley, he's a good man.
He's pretty awesome, I'll say that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything more about Scrubs, though.
I can't do this all on my own. I'm no Superman. So real quick, I just want to tell our listeners a little bit more about the movie show with Joe and Ryan. Did you know that we only use ethically sourced materials for our podcast? Man, a joke is always better when you stumble across it. Stumble the words.
Ethically is a challenging word.
Yeah.
You're doing fine.
Yeah, let me try this again. I'm going to tell the audience a little bit more about the movie show with Joel and Ryan. Did you know that we only use ethically sourced materials for our podcast? And this means that you can listen and know that we didn't use child labor or anything nefarious like that. But surely you're thinking that this must mean that our podcast costs more. Well, you couldn't be more wrong. No, the movie show with Joel and Ryan, our direct-to-consumer model allows us to not use a middleman. That means we don't have the traditional markup of regular podcasts and can pass that savings right on to you, the listener. In fact, our podcast costs 30 to 100% less than other lesser quality podcasts. So I encourage you, dear listener, to order The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan podcast today. And of course, you do that by hitting subscribe.
Yeah.
All right. You know what that means? It is time for the countdown.
10 seconds. 9,
8,
7,
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Blast off.
I had thought about doing this whole episode with some like really cheesy Western twang to not, and just not explain why I was doing it, and see if you would call me on it or just say
I would know.
Yeah, and you would just be like, what
but
the
I
hell is he
wouldn't
doing?
tell.
So this week we are counting down our top 5. I guess we can call postmodern.
That's
some would say,
yeah.
Postmodern westerns.
That's the term I used. I like that term.
Yeah, postmodern westerns.
You'll
some
have to figure
call
out,
it-
audience, really what that means. It's a pretty subjective
Yeah,
term.
it's revisionist westerns. I've heard them call some even call them anti-westerns.
But it's really any Western here out of the Western era, which is pretty much the 70s till now, which is an era we talk about a lot. It's essentially our lifetime. Now, there's some crossover, right? We consider the first really truly postmodern Western to be Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah, we use that as our cutoff.
And the last kind of proper Western maybe it was sort of the Wild Bunch. Those both came out in 1969. But there's, there have been some very true to form Westerns since then. And I think there was the idea of commenting on the genre of the Western while making a Western was happening probably before Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy really showed up and...
Yeah, there were a few. There were a few that were toying with playing with the genre a little bit.
When William Goldman wrote Butch Cassidy, he wasn't. I mean, maybe he was trying to write the best Western he could, but he was commenting on the whole genre of it, the legends, what it meant to actually be these guys. So
and of course,
I guess we can get into that. You never know, that might show up on the list.
We can quick take a moment here. William Goldman, rest in peace. At the time we're recording this, that his death just happened about a week ago. So let's.
It's happened a while back for you
Yeah.
folks, but you notice he's a guy we talk about a lot. All the President's Men, Princess Bride, we've gushed about, and certainly Butch Cassidy. That's the script with which he arrived. It's not his first movie or anything, but it's when he arrived on stage as a truly unique voice in film, and we've been grateful for him the whole time, I think. So he'll be missed.
Yeah. So I'm not going to get too much into describing, why we call them postmodern westerns or revisionist westerns. I think that will become clear as we talk about these movies, because you can't talk about these movies that we're about to mention here without really kind of talking about why they stand apart from a traditional western, a spaghetti western.
Sure, and I'll just say this is a category that means a lot to me. There are very few modern westerns that I don't enjoy to some degree, and that I seek them all out, in fact. And that's coming from somebody who doesn't really have the patience for Shane and doesn't like John Wayne and doesn't want to sit through a Jimmy Stewart western. Real classic westerns. There's some good ones, but for the most part, they do nothing for me. They're just a little too not of my world, and so I don't relate to them quite the way I'd like to. But the ones they make these days, the ones they made in my lifetime, are exciting. I really like a lot of them. So it's a big category for us, believe it or not.
Yeah, two guys from Minnesota,
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have. So let's kick it off. So number 5, calling this remaking the Western. We called this one a tie between the remake of True Grit from the Coen brothers and the 3:10 to Yuma
by James Mangold.
By James Mangold.
We'll start with True Grit.
Yeah.
True Grit. a friend of ours, Brian, Brian with a Y.
Yeah.
Has this thing. He's trotted this out a couple times because he thought of this when he was seeing the movie and thinks it's pretty clever, which it kind of is. He said when he was watching True Grit, he didn't know if he was watching a great movie or just a really, really good movie. And I was like, when that's the conversation you're having, it's pretty much a great movie.
Yeah.
I mean, these days. It came on the heels of No Country for Old Men, which was a sort of transcendent movie, won Best Picture at the Oscars and everything. True Grit isn't a Western-styled crime drama. It's not a hybrid, or it's a remake of what was already a really good Western.
Yep. One of the classic Westerns.
Yep. And it's a really great new. I don't want to say fresh, but it's a different take on the source material on the book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it so great, is that a lot of the things are the same, but it's the way they did it was not to remake the movie so much. So they avoided a lot of the iconography from the movie. They went right at the book and did the Coen version of the book,
Right.
which a lot of their stuff is done that way, and a lot of their best stuff is done that way.
Mm-hmm.
And True Grit's a delight from start to finish. It really is. Just the language of it is just wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful writing.
And Jeff Bridges. I remember when the movie came out, they were talking about how the Duke is being replaced by the Dude, and that couldn't be. I mean, I guess in the sense that they both have been able to create iconic characters, but Jeff Bridges is really, really tremendous.
He's great. It's a bummer because he's played that same character now in about half dozen movies since that movie.
Right. I
call it old codger Jeff Bridges. But it's the first time I heard him do the voice and do the whole,
Mm-hmm.
It's great because it's this performerly performance,
Mm-hmm.
It's so put up with a crazy voice and the weird walk, and he's got this whole very theatrical thing. And when he gets drunk or when he's reduced to something real, it sort of takes your breath away because it kind of sneaks up on you in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it is pretty awesome, I have to say.
Now, 310 to Yuma. 310 to Yuma, of course, with Russell Crowe, with oh my God, Christian Bale.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
that's right.
Why am I blanking on 310 to Yuma now?
Well. 310 to Yuma, it's as good in a lot of ways. It's not a movie about people who talk like True Grit is. True Grit is poetic, and 310 to Yuma is about people who shoot and slap, and I'll just say it because I can bleep it out later. It's about action, and it's full of great action. Russell Crowe's great as the man in black. It's a really good role for him. His henchman too, played by that great Ben Foster. Ben Foster is really good in stuff, and you probably know that already. That's not new. He's done since then. He's done one role after another that's been just off the charts. Him and Paul Dano, I think, are the best. Most acting for your dollar. They're the Bruce Dern of our days, kind of.
One might say they're a John C. McGinley.
Yeah. No, it is sort of that. Although
no, their roles are a little bit.
But it's John. When John shows up in something, even if it's only for a few minutes, he absolutely takes stage.
Yeah.
And that's what these guys are like. They're a little less. John's a little almost movie star-ish, even though he's a character actor, because he's got his style that he kind of brings to every role. Ben is a bit of a chameleon, but he's kind of off the hilt every time. He's fantastic in that. I mean, he's the real threat in the movie. And Christian Bale, who in The Fighter is so crazy and flamboyant, he gets to play the quiet guy that gets to prop up the crazy and flamboyant. Yeah. And he's great in it. That's a fun, full of action. The whole last 20 minutes is just nonstop. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Once it decides it's going to, it just becomes a freight train to the end of the movie.
Yep. A freight train to the passenger train.
Yeah.
That's a metaphor to the reality in the story, by the way. But
There
those
you
are
go.
both great remakes. There's actually a bunch of decent remakes out there,
Yeah.
but we thought them in the same league, in the same category.
Yeah, Ned Kelly was a High Noon had a remake. Of course, Magnificent Seven. Of course, Magnificent Seven itself, the original, what we consider the original Magnificent Seven, a remake of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai.
Correct,
But
yes.
then, of course, now we have the remake of the remake.
And Magnificent Seven, while not to the level of what we're talking about, is damn entertaining film.
Yeah.
Very much a Western for the superhero era. So since you threw that one out
Yep.
there.
So number four. Number four, we're calling this the Battle of the Wyatt Earp films.
Yeah. Although one clearly won at
is
the box
one
office
is-
and
and frankly just in longevity.
right.
And that, of course, is Tombstone.
Tombstone. Both Tombstone and Wyatt or Lawrence Kasdan's Wyatt Earp were came out in the same year. Both were absolutely cursed productions. We won't go too much into Wyatt Earp because Wyatt Earp, while a really nice film actually, is long and ponderous, very biographical, very worshipful of these characters. And Tombstone was meant to be the same thing. Kevin Jarre wrote the script and was directing it, and he was going to direct a 3-hour epic about the Earps.
Yeah.
But he was taking way too long, stopped getting along with everybody. It was starting to be a train wreck, and it was fired. And Kurt Russell, playing Wyatt Earp, looked around him and saw all these people lined up. What at the time seemed like the B cast
Right.
compared to Costner and Dennis
Correct.
Quaid and the people in Wyatt Earp, but has turned out to be some of these guys in some of their best roles ever. Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday,
Absolutely
Michael
stealing-
Biehn as
stealing
Johnny
the show.
Ringo,
Yeah.
Powers Booth. The list goes on.
Yeah.
Like a lot of great ensemble westerns, the
Yeah.
cast list is 25, 30 people long,
Mm-hmm.
all of which are doing great work. But Kurt stepped up, and he knew the only way to get the movie done. Well, first they had to get somebody that was competent enough to just be behind the camera, line up the shots, and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That turned out to be George P. Cosmatos, the Greek director.
Yeah.
I always call him Cosmatos. I know that's wrong, but I always call him that because I think it's funny.
So if you hear Cosmatos,
but it's
that's what it means.
Cosmatos, I'm pretty sure. He made Rambo 2, and he made Leviathan, and he made a disaster movie in the 70s, and he was the last of Ernie Hudson, who worked with him in Leviathan, said he was kind of this dying breed of big-time, crazy 60s and 70s director. It was this huge, loud personality.
Gonzo filmmakers,
He would
yeah,
browbeat people into doing what he wanted, and he wouldn't really tell them what he wanted. He just was all over the map. And but he came in, and his great quote about Tombstone is, "All of the lightning strikes and mustaches were real." I think that's a great
That's
quote.
spectacular.
And it really sums up Tombstone really well.
Yeah, I mean, but the two movies, you hit it on the head when Wyatt Earp was the prestige film. I mean, this was in the early days of where behind the scenes stuff was news. What was going on? Well, I mean, I guess it was in
magazines still.
But it was talked about a lot. Like both these movies were going to be dead on arrival, and is this the end of the westerns?
Yeah.
And then it quickly became, well, Tombstone is just this. It's a comic book. It's just this silly, very superficial thing. And this was all before these movies were released.
Kurt
Wyatt
Russell
Earp
came
was
to
this-
that film's rescue by editing out everything that he could.
Yeah.
Anything that could go
Yeah.
went until they were left with just what they needed to
Yeah.
do the movie, essentially.
And
so it really was this lean, mean sort of, let's get this done and in the can, or they're just going to take it away from us.
Yeah, and the result is actually this really tight, really quickly paced, yet
sort of breathless. That's
Yeah.
the term I use for it.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. But yet you still get these really fun, scene chewing in a great way. performances. By Russell himself. By Bill Paxton makes the most out of his time on screen.
Can I do a little Bill Paxton story here? Do you mind?
Always do a Bill Paxton story.
The late Bill Paxton. I hate saying that. He
God,
was taken far too young. Stan Lee, William Goldman, these guys lived to be old men. Bill Paxton was in his prime, really.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the prime of his career, but the prime of his life.
Mm-hmm.
He was told, and I'm going to paraphrase it, the details aren't important, but they were at a Broadway show of all things. I don't remember what they were seeing, but Bill Paxton was there, and this guy approached him, and he said, "Hey, my friend's shy, but he's a huge fan of yours. His favorite movie is Tombstone. And if you have a moment, could you come say hi to us? We're back. We're about 4 rows behind you, whatever." And Bill said, "Why don't you send your friend down here instead?" And he's like, "Okay, go," because we got 20 minutes or whatever. And he sent him down there, and his friend came back and was just, his eyes were huge. He's down there for 15 minutes, right up until curtain.
Yeah.
And he goes, what did he say to you? And he goes, he recited every line of his from Tombstone for me in character. He kind of whispered it, but he did that just...
That's
Bill Paxton loved being in the movies.
Yeah.
He loved these roles. He loved working with other people. And it's in all of his performances, his enthusiasm for the craft of acting, but it's more than that, of filmmaking, He knows he's just one of those guys. He knew the first name of every electrician working on the movie.
Yeah.
He loved it. He came up as a wardrobe helper and an assistant art director, and he's in a rock band, and it was a glorified extra in his first 10 movies. And he just loved being around movies.
Yeah.
And he's one of the all-time good guys, and he made good. And I don't think Tombstone's his best movie at all. If I could get him to perform one of his movies for me, it wouldn't be Tombstone.
No.
But he's great, and this story kind of relates.
That makes perfect sense. He absolutely, that description of him, he clearly just loved doing, being in films.
He found himself in the right Wyatt Earp movie that year.
Oh, goodness, yes.
He was in the one he was meant to be in.
And, he was great, and he was a great again, as someone who could sort of prop up Russell's character, and help propel that character forward.
Well, he's sort of an innocent. He plays the part in a really neat way.
Yeah.
Unlike we're used to seeing Bill, he's usually a rabble rouser and a wild man. And in that film, he was just this wide, we're gonna,
and justice, and we're gonna,
and Sam Elliott was it's with the mustache, Sam Elliott with the mustache,
and it's So Tombstone, and I really like your description of it, saying it's breathless.
It's like a gunfight. Got its dark moments, but it's really spectacular.
So number 3, this is where we started this this conversation about the postmodern Western, and we're starting it, and it is a movie that is, in some cases, we're going to get people going, "What are you talking about? This should be topping your list."
Yeah,
but Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Butch Cassidy, and I really do think Butch Cassidy, the original cast from Star Trek. You're just talking to a couple guys in their mid-40s.
Yeah.
And we experience things at certain times, and those we choose not to deny that and be too critic about everything.
Yeah.
We choose to embrace our own nostalgia and our own, so that's why this may seem low on your list. But Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, given that it's from back before either of us were around, this is a great place of honor for it, I think. It fits in great with our favorites. It's still it's infectious as soon as you watch it, the
two Robert Redford, Paul Newman, the two of them together, it absolutely is it kind of just makes you giddy when you see them. They're so much fun. It crackles. It's really
And they would have done more movies together if people would have wrote good movies for them. And screenwriters, since The Sting, whenever that was, 71 or whatever, why didn't you do that? You should have. It should have been like a room full of monkeys' job.
should have been
to write buddy scripts for Paul Newman and
Frankly,
Robert
it should have been
Redford
a
to play every
contest
other year.
It should have been a contest between all writers, just going, okay, who's going to write the next film that they're going to deem good enough that they star in.
Their chemistry is absolutely tangible, given that it's an opposites attract sort of thing for sure. And that makes the movie. I hate to talk too much about chemistry because I think if you don't have, you don't have great writing, you don't have whatever, you don't have all that stuff, you don't have a editor and a director keeping your best stuff in the movie, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How does chemistry even survive? But it's alive and well in Butch Cassidy with those two guys, and Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head is like, as silly as that is when you hear it in the dentist office, when it comes on in the movie, it is delightful.
It's so good on there on a bicycle.
It's wonderful.
And
The simplicity of it, the song, we're riding a bike for the first time, like just the excitement of that.
And what made this movie so, this was one of the first movies, and this is why we talk about in the postmodern westerns, revisionist westerns. It's Raindrops Keep Falling on Our Head. It's this wonderful, light, fun, lovely moment. But these two guys are criminals.
Yeah.
And
they're self-destructing right before our eyes, like all great guns of the West did, one way or another.
So that's what we mean when we're talking about this is talking about these types of westerns. This isn't the hero going after the villain and they square off and the hero prevails. This is two really likable villains. Two likable guys who do some, if you were, reading about them in the news, they would be pretty horrible people. But we really like these guys, and they're really charismatic. They're really fun together, and ultimately we watch them as
they both share one side of the coin of William Goldman's wit. They teach courses, and they still do, about screenwriting, where that script is at the center of the coursework and the study because it's considered near perfect.
Yeah. So what could possibly beat it?
What could? Only two things on our list, although there's a ton of westerns to talk about. Maybe we should stop and take a breath.
Yeah, because
modern westerns. I tell you what, I know which ones you're going to do, so I'm just going to read a bunch off that are awesome.
Yeah. We
did not talk about Dances with Wolves.
I know.
That seems ridiculous. Dances with Wolves really is a great movie, but it's almost outside being a western somehow.
Yeah.
I think that's why we didn't put it on here, because Dance with Wolves is a great movie, and it is a western. There's no denying it, but it's something different, too. It really is something different. It's more of a jungle adventure. It's more like Fern Gully and Avatar than it is like...
Yeah, it is really... I'm sitting here just thinking about Dances with Wolves, and it is an undeniably great movie and worthy of the praise that it got when it came out.
But it's a clash of cultures movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of great westerns have some element of that, but that is what Dances with Wolves is. That's at the very heart of it. So, look, Dances with Wolves is great.
Yep.
We're sorry it's not on the list. If you want to see a more conventional western by Kevin Costner that's not on the list, that's also great, Open Range.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Open Range, in my opinion, has the greatest shootout at the end, the greatest ultimate shootout of any western I've ever seen, and I've seen a ton. And it has a romance in the middle of it too. Open Range is a special movie that a lot of people don't care about. You don't need us to tell you that Dances with Wolves is awesome. Seraphim Falls with Liam Neeson and Pierce Brosnan is absolutely fantastic. If you like that allegorical stuff we were talking about. For Western horror fans, there's Bone Tomahawk. Boy, that's a horror movie with cowboy hats, but man, is that a fun, different movie. If you just like fun without so much horror, Quick and the Dead, Sam Raimi's Western is, it's ridiculous, but it is an absolute blast.
I almost mentioned it. I almost mentioned that earlier with when we were talking about Russell Crowe and 3:10 to Yuma.
And Ron Howard's The Missing is a film I watch once a year. Holy smokes, is that a good movie.
Yeah. I've
I
only seen that
really,
one time,
really
that one
like. I
time.
really, really like that film.
yeah.
It's a dark. It's at least it starts in a very dark place.
Mm-hmm.
But Kate Blanchett and one of my favorite Tommy Lee Jones performances. And it's funny how the kids are great in all these westerns.
Oh yeah.
We didn't mention
yeah.
her in True Grit, but the
Mhm.
young lady who stars in that is spectacularly good in that
Mhm.
film. So I could keep going,
Yeah,
but I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, yeah, and then we have Quentin Tarantino's his entrances into the Western world in The Hateful Eight and in Django Unchained.
Yeah, I don't see Django Unchained so much as a Western, but it certainly
has
is like a
Western. Yeah, it's
Western.
like a Western.
Hateful Eight, though, is other than being sort of an Agatha Christie whodunit, is that is absolutely a Western. A really fun movie for a 3-hour whodunit.
The Frisco Kid.
Oh my God!
I'm a big fan of the Frisco Kid.
I adore the Frisco Kid.
And of
I
course,
forgot all about it too.
I love that movie.
The Frisco Kid with Harrison Ford and Gene Wilder. If you didn't, a lot of people don't know this existed. When we used to rent a VCR, this is when a VCR was special.
Yeah.
And you went to the video store and rented the VCR as well as the movies. Every time, until we owned a VCR. Every time we went to the rental store, Frisco Kid was in the pile.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Absolutely. We were really lucky. We were early adopters. My parents fell in love with the VCR at a friend's house, and they went out and bought one. And
you can watch movies in your very own home without commercials.
And they dropped a giant chunk of change on it's early. Put the tape in, slam it down, the buttons on it, and CNH video in downtown Osseo, Osseo, Minnesota.
That's where we went.
Yeah, so it was, and Frisco Kid. So if you went to Frisco, you went to get Frisco Kid, and it was out, it was probably at our house.
It was a green Warner Brother clam case, and it just had a picture of Gene Wilder on the beach.
Yep.
We rented it, I don't know how many times. Frisco Kid is a comedy. It's certainly a Western. It's more a comedy than a Western, but
not a comedy like Blazing Saddles.
Don't let that stop you. It costs about $20. Gene Wilder is absolutely most adorable in it, and Harrison Ford just trying to do anything. He did a war movie, did this movie, did a romance, wanted to do anything that didn't have laser guns in it.
Right.
But he showed up for that film. He's fantastic in it.
So we'll mention a couple other movies as we talk about our number 2 film.
Yeah, but you see how we love these. We're running out of time. Sorry about
our number 2 film.
Yeah.
Is one of the classic, iconic men in the Western genre, the modern Western genre. Genre, of course, is Clint Eastwood
for sure.
And while Pale Rider is great. And The Outlaw Josie Wales is great, and of course his spaghetti westerns like Fistful of Dollars and
those are not in the post-modern western category.
They don't have,
but they're all-time great movies, let alone westerns.
Absolutely, but of course in my opinion, and I think in yours, the finest of all of these films is Unforgiven.
Unforgiven, yeah, with a script by David Peoples and directed by Clint Eastwood himself when he hadn't had a hit in a while.
Yeah.
Unforgiven is so good. It's so good. It's probably the best film on our list, and maybe deserves the one spot because of that. Because the way Unforgiven, the way it has every great thing you would want from a Western in it, to the great scene where the henchmen are babbling, to the great way that our main bad guy happens to be a sheriff in this case, intimidates people. Those scenes between him and Richard Harris, Gene Hackman, who won the Oscar.
Yep.
Boy, are they good. And it's a buddy road movie, even if it's a sort of a clumsy one, but an artistically clumsy one. And it's about a guy who was a killer who sobered up and just became a guy. And because of circumstances that because of desperate circumstances, he becomes a killer again.
Yeah.
And
it's
the transformation is remarkable.
Yeah, it's one of these films where it's a guy who hates his own past,
So it's a great character movie,
but it's forced to in this case, to pick up the gun again.
But what it's really is a deconstruction of the life and experiences of a gunfighter in the Old West. The wisdom that it has about what it was probably like, and the truthfulness with which it's delivered is unparalleled in any of the rest of these. Especially that truthfulness part. It really feels right. It feels like you're watching something that is very real, and because of that, it gets under your skin in a way that the rest of these I think don't, and still entertains you.
So Unforgiven is a spectacular movie. Maybe should be number one, but when we talked about our number one movie,
we both have a sentimental favorite. That's the same
this
movie.
is all heart. Well, I mean, it's a great movie, but it gets number one because of the place it holds in our heart, and that is Lawrence Kasdan's Silverado.
It's hard to know. We've talked so much, and it's hard to even know what to say about
if you
Silverado.
love westerns, this movie it's an absolute murderer's row of talent in this film, from Kevin Kline to Kevin Costner to Scott Glenn to Patricia Arquette to Brian Dennehy to Danny Glover to Jeff Goldblum, Linda Hunt. I'm forgetting people because it's just there's still more people.
Brian James.
Yeah.
He had his name taken off of it because his role was cut too small. But you got to the heart of it. It's the story.
John Cleese makes an appearance.
Boy, is he
just
good
a
in
great.
it too.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's a story of these four guys who come together on the dusty trail to Silverado. Four men became friends, and friends became heroes on the road to Silverado.
There it is. That's the story. And
it's great. Scott Glenn and Kevin Kline in particular, although our four heroes, which include Kevin Costner in his most off-the-hook, crazy performance.
They let him be the really goofy one.
Exactly. That's what he was at that time.
Well, it's true. I mean, he had.
He didn't become the sort of stiff upper lip straight guy that he became yet. In Fandango, he was the sort of crazy guy, and that's kind of who he was in life too. But Kevin Costner's crazy in it. Danny Glover's spectacularly good in it.
Yep.
And those are our four heroes. Dennehy's great as the corrupt sheriff with the smirk. Everything's funny and witty to him, and life's short, so whatever, here we go.
Yeah.
He's got a great line in it, and it's one of the most quotable movies to me of all time. He says, once he gets one of our heroes in a corner, he says, we're going to give you a fair trial, followed by a first-class hanging.
Yep.
And that's the kind of movie it is. The way these people talk is so delightfully fun.
Oh, it's so good.
Lawrence wrote it with his brother Mark, and it is all at once a love letter to westerns, especially the ensemble western. It has all the tropes and moments that you could think as many iconic things packed into a movie as possible.
Yep.
While at the same time, it's a bit of a winking send-up. But it's, like you say, it's got so much heart that it's able to tease the Western genre in a way that's just lovingly, like you tease a friend.
Yeah.
And it from start to finish, it's a celebration, and that's what I feel when I watch it. It has one of my most favorite musical scores of all time by Bruce Broughton. Every time I hear that music, I'm elated. I am taken to the clouds. It's that kind of film. I really adore it. Like I love some of my friends. I love it like that.
It came on TV the other night. I immediately I watched it, and then I texted Ryan and I said, "So what are we going to talk about this week? How about westerns? Maybe we should talk about westerns." And Ryan's like, "Sure, let's talk about westerns." Because I'm like, I need to talk about Silverado a little bit, because it's such a lovely film. So so Silverado, please. We love Silverado. You will love Silverado if you love westerns, and so now you can please enjoy it.
For sure.
So that means that we are ready to turn up the heat a little bit, and now it is time for the Hollywood hot takes.
Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes.
Let's get some hot takes. All right. So, of course, this is the segment where I throw out a Hollywood hot take. And then we...
and I get the privilege of agreeing or disagreeing.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's...
And you get the privilege of agreeing or disagreeing with
And
me.
if you... Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Let us know.
Yeah.
And I've said them before. I will say them again later. But obviously, ask Joel and Ryan on the social media stuff.
Yeah, those places.
Those places.
All right, let's go.
Hollywood hot take number 1.
Yes.
Let Jughead be Jughead. Stop turning comics that were nice and fun into dark, adult, steamy fare.
Yeah.
That's my hot take.
Well, yes. I'll just say, and that's a hard one for me because I like taking source material seriously. I don't know if that necessarily means making it dark. But in general, I don't think you should take something that's fun and, try and serious it up. But that's not the trend I'm seeing.
Well, this is not the trend. This is
in comics. I see
tracker.
it the other way around. If you're gonna make a 21 Jump Street movie, why don't you try making a movie about 21 Jump Street that takes the premise of that seriously?
Yeah.
I know it's silly, but why don't you try that? If you want to make, when people were making Baywatch, they didn't think they were making a piece of junk.
Right.
That was stupid. That everybody was laughing at, even if they were. They thought they had a kind of mystery, whatever drama of the week, and they did the best they could with it. When people were doing, I don't know. I mean, the list just goes on and on. I named 2.
Mine is basically Riverdale. I'm like, really? Come on, it's Archie, Veronica. Just let Jughead have his funny hat and
Are they making that into a serious dark?
It is. It's
already is.
On the on the CW? Yeah.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
that's our characters.
Hey, folks, I'll just give you a tip. I'm not doing this hot take justice. Stop making things that thought they were serious into parodies first. Don't let that be your first instinct. I'm not against parodies, but if you want to steal the idea. Don't just steal the name because it's marketable and turn it into some piece of junk.
Yeah.
And then it's on what? The CW?
I think it's on the CW.
Folks, this is just a tip. Don't watch anything on the CW. I don't.
Okay.
I didn't know what he was talking about, and I really do believe that my life is better for it. So that's a free tip that goes along with that hot take.
And an extra bonus, I guess, for me for ruining Ryan's life. Just a little. Because now he knows it's in the world.
I had no idea.
All right, so Hollywood hot take number 2.
I had no idea they did it like an OC. That's what you're talking about, right? A 90210, except with...
Yeah,
What an awful idea.
So Hollywood hot take number 2. If the Blair Witch Project has taught us anything, it's that all movies should be shot with handheld cameras and as shaky and as real as possible.
No, but that movie should have been.
Yes, I know. But the found object, the found footage.
Right. Most of those are garbage. It's hard even to go back in time now and watch. I like Blair Witch Project. I thought it was such a clever idea. Those guys became jillionaires. Any of us could have made that stupid movie. That's a theme that will be recurring. But every time I see something like that, I'm like, why? Only thing I could think of was to do a podcast. Why didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that?
Right.
It's so simple. And I love it for its simplicity. But no, and I think this trend was with us for a while. And even in like bigger films, the Bourne movies or whatever, people call it shaky cam.
Yeah.
In Cloverfield,
NYPD
shaky
Blue,
cam is great. It's very effective. If you're in James Bond, not so much. It's kind of nice to see a little what's going on.
Yeah, I think wasn't it NYPD Blue? Was that the? Yeah, I think that was the show that.
But
really
even
kinda
that, by
ushered
today's
in.
shaky cam standards, that's
it's pretty
tame.
smooth. Yeah,
Yeah.
Because it gets downright nauseating sometimes.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of shaky cam, but I don't hate it. It's a tool in the toolbox. If you don't overuse it or you're not using it because you can't think anything better, like if you're not just whatever, I can be a filmmaker. I don't just do this. People didn't see me, but you can figure it out. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I like found footage movies, so, whatever.
All movies should be like that. That's the hot take.
Yeah, no.
Hollywood hot take number 3.
Number 3.
Alcohol at the cinemas? I mean, come on. I don't want some idiot getting sloshed and yelling at the screen because he thinks Leo DiCaprio is his mama. Hollywood hot take.
No, I love alcohol at the cinemas, even though I don't partake in it. And here's why. I love that there's a 21 and older section at the place I go to see movies. Some of the people who drink hard liquor through the movies, like, it's not so much that they're rude, but they're just really into it. Like, they get up like 3 times to go get another Manhattan or whatever it is they're drinking. You know what I mean? But I love the adults only section, like a first class section. I think that's a neat idea. And whatever gets people to the movies.
Gets people to the movies.
I'm down with that. I think it's fine. I just never experienced anybody obnoxious. That said, I hate the sound of glass hitting the little table, and the ice shaking like that.
Yep.
Those aren't movie sounds to me, so that's the downside. But mostly I think it's okay.
Hollywood hot take number 4.
Number 4.
Less reboots, more sequels and prequels.
Yeah, and let's not forget the remakes. Somebody asked me the other day, what's your favorite kind of movie? And I said, I like all movies. I like prequels and sequels and remakes and reboots.
Yeah.
What else is there?
TV.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Reality?
Look,
real world? No,
I don't know the answer to that hot take, because that hot take answers its own question. We don't like it, and yet we're getting it and we're eating it up. So what do? You know what I mean? If they're going to make a prequel to something I like, it's not going to keep me from it just out of principle. Yeah. So I don't care. You want to reboot something for the 4th time? If you make it good, take my money.
Star is Born.
I mean that's a remake for the 4th time, basically,
and by all accounts, a very successful one.
You bet. So it's not. I don't have a problem with. I really don't. I yearn for original work, but I get when they make John Carter or whatever, they make Tomorrowland. People don't show up to these movies. They show up to the same thing again. They somehow showed up to Transformers 5.
And now they'll show up for Bumblebee.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cause and effect relationship there. If you don't like those things and you find yourself sitting at Bumblebee, I don't know, maybe Bumblebee will be good. I don't see how, but maybe it will be. I haven't seen it, so I don't want to judge it. But you ask yourself if you're part of your own problem, basically. And if you're not, if you like Transformers 5, go with God. I think that's great. I don't have any problem with that. But people should make, I don't care what category it falls into if it's good. Please make good movies. It's fine. It can be prequels and sequels and whatever. I don't care.
Just be good.
Please.
Which kind of ties into Hollywood hot take number 5.
Here we go. This is the last one, right?
Yep. Detective Pikachu as a movie will be, it's probably going to be all right.
I'm going to have to buy a vowel on this one.
You know about Detective Pikachu?
I don't.
It's essentially the Pokemon movie.
And Pokemon is something I'm supposed to know, because why?
Oh, yeah. I guess I just thought culturally you would have.
You're making me look really stupid in front of the listeners with this hot take.
Pikachu has Ryan Reynolds.
I get it. He's one of these. He's one of these little Pokemon things.
Yeah. He's like the little yellow Pokemon guy.
Look, my hat's off to Pokemon. Pokemon started when I was still out on tour when I was in my mid-20s or whatever, and it's still here. But when I was in my mid-20s, I didn't care about it, and I care less about it now. So it was never for me. And I don't have a kid, and I feel pretty out of touch culturally answering this question, but I love you podcast listeners, but I just want to be honest with you. I'm not going to research or get into Pokemon or be seeing any Pokemon movies or downloading any Pokemon apps for you. That's not going to be enough. Unless you're going to take me out on a date or something.
Or give us multiple 5-star reviews and vault our podcast to number 1 on iTunes.
That's still not.
That's still not enough?
No, not for any one single person, I'm afraid.
And that in itself is a Hollywood hot take.
That's where my integrity ends, apparently, is right there at the right before you get to Pokemon. I won't do it, even if you bribe me. I apologize.
It will not happen.
But what was the hot take again?
I just said that the Pikachu movie is going to be fine.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Why
I
not?
thought that, hey, it was me trying to be glib and funny.
Yeah, and I ruined
Yeah.
it. Like, I ruined some things, but I think I tried to ruin it in as eloquent a way as I
Yeah,
could.
well, I ruined your life by letting you know that these shows on CW exist, and now that you know that Pokemon exists.
Sorry, folks. Those hot takes didn't go very good. I
Yeah,
would
that's
just,
all right. You
just
know,
don't have my finger on
hey,
the pulse
you
of
know,
the world.
Not every segment can be an absolute barn burner.
All right. We had a couple good ones in
All
there.
right. So now, I'm hoping that some people have some questions.
Yeah.
I have a question. Who gave you the right to play God?
What the hell's going on out here?
Why do I bother?
What is the point in doing anything?
How dare you!
What more do you want from me?
I have a question.
So this question, of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter and Instagram at Ask Joel and Ryan. On the Facebook page, The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, you can like it and you can send us a message there. Of course, you can send us an email at askjoelandryan@gmail.com. That works too.
Get in at the ground level, folks. You got a real good shot at getting on the show if you ask us questions right now.
Absolutely. I will make my best effort to get you on. So
I have a question.
There you go. The number of movies based on real life events. In 1996, it was 7% of all movies were based on real life events. In 2018, 27% of all movies were based on real life events. Why do you think? What do you think has led to this sort of this based on real life?
Ripped
Increase.
from the headlines stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but having watched a bunch of movies and noticing that the big expensive, the big event movies were all fantasies of one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
The smaller movies that I saw, a good deal of them, Woman Walks Ahead, which I already mentioned, Mark Felt, which we talked about. There was a whole bunch on that level. They got actors, top to bottom. These aren't small movies, but by today's standards, compared to Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Sure.
they're super small movies.
And
They're,
of course, is based on real.
I don't want to call them
too.
indies because they just don't feel like that at all. They're big studio indies,
Yeah.
but they don't cost nearly as much to make. They cost as much as a few weeks of making a TV show, and every once in a while, a real movie. One of these, comes to the forefront and really becomes one of the things of the year. A great real life movie is a movie called Truth with Robert Redford and Kate Blanchett about Dan Rather's, basically how he was taken down by the Bush administration when they kind of found out about his National Guard records. There's just dozens and dozens of films like that. They're not all as good as that, but they all, there's a nobility about pretty much all of them. When you want to tell somebody's real life story, there's some that it's like anything. There's some I don't like, but there's something responsible about the filmmaking in the case of a lot of these, like this desire to elevate some real life thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That those moments where we've said it on previous podcasts where heroism wasn't sought out, it was thrust upon them.
Yeah.
And there are, Deepwater Horizon and Flight 91 and is that right? Flight 91.
Either way, Sully, the Upside
and
Down,
Sully,
or United 93.
United 93, yeah. Flight
Is
93.
that the one
That's
movie
what
you mean?
yeah,
The
Flight
Greengrass
93.
movie?
Yeah, the Greengrass movie.
Yeah. That's a great movie.
Yeah,
Oh my
so it's
goodness.
again, it's this. I think there's, so there's a way to. I think, you have these news stories and people want to see it's a chance where the quote unquote common person, the person just out there doing their job or just living their life, they rise up to some huge challenge, and maybe it's a way for and Hollywood's able to say, look, any of us can do this and should, if the circumstance requires it,
Yeah, and
you
look,
know, this
audiences
could have been you.
audience like to know what they're going to see too. That's a
There is an
proven
element to-
fact.
yeah.
So when you take a story they already know and then give them the movie experience of that story, that's a very satisfying thing when it's done well, just from a pure entertainment standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in favor of that trend, and I don't mind it. That's not really the question. Not sure why it is,
Sure.
except
I just
that
wanted your opinion on
except that it's not surprising to me that the more history we put behind us in the movie era, that the more history comes into our films. That's to me, that makes perfect sense. It doesn't surprise me.
So question number 2.
Okay.
Does anyone have any more questions?
I have a question.
Oh, thank you. Here it is. This is from Kathy Beeman
Hey.
on Facebook. Asks us, what do you think is the biggest / hardest to accept suspension of reality moment in a film? What is your moment? Obviously not science fiction or fantasy, but and her example, and I think this is a pretty good example. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where they're shooting up their house, shooting at each other, destroying their house with gunfire, and no one calls the police because they're hearing, no neighbor calls the police. One of those type. That's the moment we're talking
Kathy, I would invite you to go back and check out Mr. and Mrs. Smith again. When they're shooting up their house, it's a very noisy sequences because they're action sequences. But almost all the guns they're shooting in those sequences have silencers on them. So it's not a lot of gunfire. It's a lot of their china cabinet and their couch and whatever blowing up. And it's still loud. I get that. But that movie, it's paced in a way that it doesn't want you thinking about that. And you shouldn't be thinking about it too much to the end. That said, it's a good example of something that didn't bother me at all. That takes you out of it.
You know what she's talking about. Where you're like, what?
Yeah, where's my line? I can only tell you an example of one thing, and this is funny. This says a lot about me. So that's not what I mean to do, but it just does. You're going to learn something about me when I'm watching movies. When people are driving and they're not looking at the road.
Oh yeah.
Now that's very common. But it doesn't make me go, oh, this movie sucks. It makes me anxious in a weird way. Like I'm desperate to not give up my suspension of disbelief.
Right.
I'm fighting to hang on to it, and it makes me anxious. It makes me anxious because I think they're going to get into an accident. It makes me anxious. It just gets me all uptight. It always has in whatever stupid thing I'm watching. And that tells you that what I want to do, I want to accept the thing for what it is. Typically, I'm easy on suspension of disbelief.
Yeah,
Maybe
me
not
too.
when the movie's over. I'll look back on something and I can, pretty much tear anything apart that I want if it comes to that. But when I'm watching the movie, I really do try and roll with it, and that's something that I'm just wired that way. It's a blessing. I'm very bad. I think I'm a pretty smart guy, but I'm very bad at figuring out who the murderer is or getting those clues because somewhere in my brain I don't want them. I don't want to know.
So I want to go on this ride and I want and sure I'll be like, oh, what does that mean? And yeah, sure, but I don't want I would agree with that. It's these little moments where of inauthenticity of where something happened and it's just a little thing enough to pull you out of the reality. Or pull you out of the story and make you think about the filmmaking technique.
Yeah.
So, but thank you, Kathy. Do you want me to say your name on a podcast? Do you want to live forever in podcastdom? Feel free to send us a question. You know where to reach us. Yay. So what do you got coming up this week, Ryan? Anything?
Nothing. My concentration right now is on ending the show, so it's not the longest show ever.
It's going to be close.
I know.
I could just keep talking. We only have a few more seconds.
You're making me very anxious right now.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us this week on The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. We will see you next week for our holiday extravaganza.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, you guys. We love y'all.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.
Christ almighty, it's like I'm sitting here playing cards with my brother's kids or something.